National Fishermen and Pacific Marine Expo are proud supporters of the Galley Stories podcast, as we make similar efforts to highlight the people and topics that define commercial fishing. You can see what that looks like in print and online all year long, as well as every November in Seattle when this community comes together at PME. Check out nationalfisherman.com and pacificmarineexpo.com to learn more.
Hey guys, this episode is brought to you by Alaska Brewing Company out of Juneau, Alaska. Go check out their new Wild Ness beer. Launched on March 1st, any place that you got a good retailer near you or your favorite watering hole. Here we go. Hello guys, welcome to another installment of Galley Stories, Stories of the Bering Sea and Beyond. I am your host, Mark Haler. Today we have Captain Casey Coupchiak with us. How are you doing, Casey?
A little tired, but I'm here.
Yep, bumped into her last night up in the radio room, and we decided to give it a shot of capturing her stories. So, Casey, where were you born and what got you into the fishing industry?
Well, I was born in Anchorage, but I spent the first few years of my life in Togiak. That's where my dad's side of the family is from, and my mom met him there. And then I mostly grew up in Kenai, Nikiski, and I got into fishing by inheriting my grandfather's drift permit when I was 17, but my birthday's in the fall, so I didn't fish until I was 18.
Okay. What was that first experience like?
It was on a boat that I didn't know anyone. It was a guy that my dad had fished with back in the 80s, and he had a boat. It was brand new. It was a jumbo waggly, and I was nervous. I didn't know what I was the D permit. But
can you explain that, what a D permit is to our listeners?
A D permit is you're allowed 2 permits per boat here in Bristol Bay, and it gives you an extra shackle of gear, so an extra 50 fathoms of gear. So you get 200 instead of 150.
More opportunity.
More opportunity, yes. And it could definitely make a difference. But I know plenty of people that don't have Ds and do awesome.
So no experience to permit holder to bring in your D to the boat.
Well, so I had subsistence growing up.
Let's talk about that.
Subsistence, my grandma, I watched her I'd spend about a month or so in Togiak every summer. My parents split when I was young, but that's why I grew up in Kenai. But I'd spend every other Christmas and a good chunk of my summer in Togiak. And I'd always watch my grandma go and set out her subsistence net, and with some help from her kids. And then she'd just be all day at her cutting table and hanging up her fish to dry in her traditional drying rack and smokehouse. And so when I got old enough, all my friends when all my friends got old enough, I'd see my friends less and less, and I'd be like, huh, where are all my friends? And found out that they're all helping their families fish. And so I ended up going and checking out what my grandma was doing, and my aunt brought me out when I was 9. And then that's when I found out I never wanted to be a set netter, because she made me pick the whole net by myself at 9, and it was very hard. It was a good day. I do remember it being a good day, but it was tough work.
9 years old picking the whole net.
Yeah. Well, she'd help me pull it in, obviously. I didn't have the muscles. But, yeah, it was tough.
Okay, so you got some experience.
A little experience, yeah.
Okay.
But I had never been on a boat, and so that was different. And that's when the South Side Trident was booming, too. So it was pretty cool. I flew in. The crew was great. There was one guy that definitely helped and taught me a bunch. And the captain was super nice, and we did fine. We fished here in Naknek and Igigik. And I remember one hairy situation. It ended up being like 12,000 pounds in the net, but we were like drifting crazily. I didn't know what I could do to help, but I just tried to stay back and not get in anyone's way, because I was like 18, had like no muscles. I was little. So, yeah.
Okay. So give us a little more story about that first year.
First year, it was tiring. I just remember, like, wanting to prove that I could do this, because I had inherited something that at the time I don't know if I like appreciated it, but now that it's been like 14 years, I definitely have appreciated it. I think I didn't know what I was doing, but then of course when I got my paycheck at the end, I was like, oh wow, this is awesome. Like, and then I was going to college, so, which didn't work out. I ended up like figuring out, oh, I can make this money in the summer. And yeah, it was hard work. And I think the guy that was on deck with me, one of the guys that was on deck with me that knew exactly what he was doing and had been doing this for a while, really helped me appreciate and learn the smart, safe ways to do things. Because I know people that could come up here and just not, like, get thrown into it and not know what they're doing, get hurt, hate it, what have you. But I think I had a really good start with that guy on deck with me.
Crew makes all the difference.
Exactly. Yep. Good crew is awesome. Like, it could make or break your season, basically. If you don't have a good crew and it's like drama and no one like fighting, it doesn't work. And you're only here for like 5-6 weeks, like fishing. Like, if you don't have a good solid crew, it could be a disaster.
How did you progress from there?
I was on that boat for a couple of years. I think just 2 years. And then from there, I went to my uncle's boat. He had I forgot what kind of boat he had. Maybe the same. No. I forgot what kind of boat he had, but it's the Mariah, and it had twin screw. And this is my uncle on my mom's side. He's been fishing a lot longer on that side out here, and he's always figured it out himself. But I just remember I was on his boat with 3 Jakes. He's Jake, the 2 crew were Jake, and then it was me. And that was a fun year. I got to know my uncle. I was also the D, of course, on that boat, and he's a hard ass, but love him to death. He knows what he's doing, and he knew how to work. And even if he was yelling at you and cussing at you, at the end of the day, it was like, nice job, like, you did great. Like, and I'm like, are you sure?
Was there nicknames for the Jakes?
It was Uncle Jake for me, and then there was a Jake, and then there was a Fletcher. So, yeah, or Fletch. So, yeah.
Okay. How long were you with him?
Also a couple of years. And then I did take a year off. The price wasn't great, and I had a decent job at the hospital, so I just leased my permit out to him. And then from there, I got my own boat, an old shore boat, a K-17, and that was still also on the south side.
What year was this?
The years are blending together. It was probably...
You haven't had that many of them.
But I'm just like, I'm not good at figuring out the year, what season it was, like number it was. Probably around 2014, 15, 16.
Okay.
I think.
So your own boat.
Own boat, yep. And it was a dry boat.
So 22 or 23 years old at the time.
Yes. Yep. Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. Dry boat, no stove, laying on the floor, floor to be closest to the engine when you were cold. And I had a good mentor on that, kind of helping teach me how to be a captain, basically, how to set out right. Like, on the other boats, I didn't get to, like, run the boat as much. So on this boat, I was able to run the boat, have someone there telling me, this is how you want to set the net, like, this is how you want to hook your net, figure out how the fish are running, and Yeah, and that's when I kind of started branching out more to other districts also, not just Naknek or Iqaluit. I'd been down to Ugashik, and then it wasn't until I was later in my time when I went to the Noosh. So I ended up going to Ugashik before I went to the Noosh.
How'd you do the first year with your own boat?
First year, I did good, well, actually. This is my first year without my mentor on it. So I had my own crew, but we were all green. I was a green captain, like green deck. I had a guy that was there that had fished before, but he had fished like seining in Southeast. And
did you do that on purpose so that you had more experience?
No, I did not. I needed someone that was maybe more mechanically inclined than me, and I thought I had one, and it didn't really turn out that way, but it ended up being fine. My first season, my boat was ready before my uncle. I had another uncle come up, and he was helping run my mom's boat that she had bought and fishing her permit. And so my boat was ready, and I was just like, I'm going to Iqaluit. And he was like, well, he was like, okay, I'll be right behind you. And then I was out of radio range. No cell phones then, no Starlink, nothing. And I just went for it, and it was kind of crappy weather the whole run down at night, and my crew was the really green guy was puking the whole time. There was the opener the next day. Turns out my uncle had more problems that came up, so he wasn't going to be right behind me. And I get to Iqaluit, and I also had a filmer on the boat, and that was also wild. It never came to anything, but I was just talking with my crewman this year, and she was like, you had a film crew on the first year that you were doing anything? But
where's this footage at?
In the archives somewhere. I think I might have it. I think I recorded it on a GoPro, but we weren't allowed to have access to it until it came to something. Mm-hmm. And so I get to Iqaluit, and I'm setting out, and everything's fine. It's all good. And that filmer had like this GoPro on this huge long stick, and I was like, hey man, like, don't get that too close to the net when it's setting out. And he's like, oh, I know what I'm doing. Next thing you know, the friggin' GoPro is in the net, hanging out. And I was like, dude. And luckily he retrieves his GoPro. It stayed in the net. That was my first set. Then he's like, we get him off the boat. And that day was like fine. It was kind of just getting my net wet, trying to figure out like what I'm doing right, what I'm doing wrong. Then he's off, the filmer's off the boat, and it's just, oh no, he's still on the boat. And then my next set, I'm setting, and I'm halfway setting out, and I lose steering, and I have no steering at all. And I start to panic, and I'm like, oh my gosh, what do I do? I like panic, and I'm like, Kyle, what's wrong? This was the guy that's fished in the Southeast. And he was like, I don't know. I was like,
is this the mechanical? Yeah.
More mechanically inclined supposedly than I am. And he's like, I don't know. And I'm like, oh my gosh, my other deckhand's puking because he's still seasick. And I'm just like, oh my gosh, I'm screwed. And then this filmer is like getting it, all this footage. And I'm like trying not to freak out, but I'm freaking out. And okay, I finally kind of calmed down. And I'm like, okay, something's got to happen. No one's going to fix this for me. I'm really on my own to figure this out. The camera guy had no idea what was like happening. So I like finally started troubleshooting. Like, okay, what changed? What did we do at the beginning of this season that could attribute to this? Because I was like going back and forth on the like steering, and nothing was happening. And so then I like look at I was up on the top steering helm, and nothing was wrong. And then I was like, oh, we replaced some hoses on the back helm. So we go back there, and it's just spewing ATF. everywhere. And I'm like, okay, who replaced the hoses? Because you guys are stronger than me. Please tighten these. Like, and then we tightened them up, got them all like put together, and I started putting an ATF in, and then I was slowly getting my steering back. But mind you, I still had my net out too, part of it. And I was like, oh my gosh, now I need to worry about not backing over the net. But figured it out. I remember in that filming that was happening, it was me kind of freaking out and like looking for someone, and then they edited it to be having the other deckhand puking in the background. Like, I do remember that from that footage. And that was the last day with that filmer on, which was a relief. But then it was, my uncle was still nowhere in Igigik, near Igigik. And I was setting out near the west line and thought I was doing fine. And the tide had just switched and we were starting to go out, so we started picking. And I had about like 25 fathoms left, and then I realized, oh, I'm over the line. And then I see a trooper coming straight for my boat. So I'm like, guys, we got a round haul. Like, start round hauling. And they're like, the green guy was like, I don't know what that is. And Kyle was like, okay. And so he like, tell us what to do. And so we like got the power roller ready, and like I was like, went back there and like started like grabbing the net while they pulled in the lines, and the trooper was at the end of my buoy, like 10 fathoms left, and like trying to get it, seeing us work really hard and kind of looking at us like, really? And then I go up on this top helm and I'm like, I'm super sorry, I totally misjudged, like I don't like, and they're like, okay, well, you just need to be mindful of your lines. And then like kind of were like, don't do that again, and let me off, which was pretty freaking great.
Explain to us what over the line means.
So there's district lines that we're allowed to fish in, so that's as far as we can go, and you let the fish come into the district, into the mouth of the river basically, and that is what it's regulated by the state of Alaska, and then the troopers kind of make sure that is what's the word I'm trying to say? Like, followed. Like, the rules are followed. Because people get impatient, people get greedy, and the fish are just piling in through that one part of the line in that district, and you're like, want that big catch. And so people just push the limits of like going over the line, because really, if like there's the line, and then if you're flooding into the district, so you're going to set your net out, and then you're going to be in the district right away. So people just push that a little too hard sometimes. Then I think the next day my uncle finally showed up, and we ended up charging down to Ugashik, and then we sat for like 5 days in Dago Creek, and that was when we had late line on KDLG, which was awesome and hilarious. Just people, drunk fishermen, kind of calling in after 10 p.m., talking just the most random stuff ever. And it was this poor lady, I forgot her name, and she was pretty young, that had to regulate everybody. No cussing on late line, but it's a bunch of fishermen that are calling in drunk that there's going to be some cussing, and she'd just cut you off, or she'd give you a warning, and then if you just keep going, she'd just cut you off. But she was pretty sweet about it. Had a good night one night, and then my uncle peeled off after we had like enjoyed that time, and we didn't have an opener the next day. I get this knock on my boat, and I'm like, ugh, like, who is that? Like, my uncle was gone. Like, Robert's already awake and like coming over, but it was the troopers. I stick my head out the window, and it's the troopers, and they're like, we're looking for Casey Coupchiak. And I was like, okay, yeah, I'm her. And they're like kind of surprised. They might have been expecting a guy or something. I was like, yeah. And they're like, have you talked to your mom in the last week? And I was like, yeah, I talked to her yesterday. And they're like, well, last she heard is that you were out in the middle of Bristol Bay with no steering. And I'm like, checking my calendar. I'm like, you guys, this was a week ago. I've talked to my mom. I'm totally safe, anchored in Dago. And it's like, are you doing your job? Because it took you a week to find me. What if I really wasn't here? Like, so that then ended up having a really great season. I asked for my life jacket once during that season. That was pretty scary, but it ended up being fine.
What was the cause for the life jacket?
Oh, I went out. I had caught 7,000 pounds kind of in the river in Ugashik, and then I heard that there was some fish outside, so I went out. I delivered my 7 and then went out around this big sandbar that you have to go around to get, unless you make it through the cut, and the cut was not there. Or maybe I went out the cut and then I couldn't get back in. And then the sandbar just creates these huge waves on the ebb. And then the wind, if it's blowing a certain way, it makes the waves even bigger. And so there's a ditch like on the outside. And I had been fishing. I caught another like 7 or 8. And then I saw other people kind of picking up, and that's when I knew I needed to go in, because I was definitely always aware like what was happening around me, because like I don't want to be out there alone. And so we picked up the net. There was a couple boats in front of me, maybe a boat or 2 behind me. So I knew I was in the clear of like if anything crazy happened, because I knew this like corner was pretty gnarly and could be really gnarly. And we were getting there, and they were pretty humongo waves. And so I asked my deckhand, I was like, hey, can I get a life jacket? And he was like, really? And I was like, yeah, I'm just going to be safe. Had my life jacket, got my life jacket, and I was like, you're in the ditch for a decent amount of time coming around that corner. So it was kind of scary. My other deckhand that has done fishing in Southeast was like eating a cup of noodles like nothing was wrong, but I was like, oh my gosh, it's my fault if I mess anything up. Like, make it fine, take off my life jacket. My life jacket didn't even have a CO2 cartridge in it, but I guess it was just peace of mind that I had it on. And yeah, I caught like 100,000 pounds that year, and it was pretty incredible. It was super fun, but nerve-wracking, but I also learned so much. So
what's your best time at sea?
My best time at sea? Like every time I come out here? This is my favorite time of year.
Love it, huh?
Yeah. Yep.
What's your worst time at sea?
Worst time at sea. I don't want to hurt my uncle's feelings, but I tried long lining last year, and it was right before this season, and I just really did not like long lining. I have a major respect for them now. I always had asked him every time, because he's a career fisherman, and I was always asking him, can I please come halibut fishing? Can I please come halibut fishing? And he was like, oh, I have a good crew. And then finally it worked out, and then I was like, no wonder you didn't really want me to come longlining.
What did you like about it?
I mean, I was baiting the whole time. So, and I do have carpal tunnel, so when I was trying to help clean the fish or clean the black cod, I like barely had any grip to like scrape out the bloodline and stuff. So I was just in the shack the whole time. I didn't get to see how much fish was coming on board or anything like that. And I know that uncle also could be a hard ass, so I didn't want to disappoint him, but it was hard work. And then it was straight into salmon fishing, and I was like, crap, my hands are already worked. But it wasn't even my worst time, because it was still an amazing experience, and I loved it. But I just won't do it again.
It's funny how you go through those experiences and you just hate them at the moment.
Right.
But later on, you kind of get a little respect for it.
Oh, of course. We ended up being able to do a couple days of pot cod, and I loved that. I will say I did hydros, but it was super fun finding the finesse of trying to get the pot on deck and everything. So.
Mm-hmm. So in your 15 years of fishing, what has the sea given to you?
I think the sea has given me a connection to my culture and my livelihood. My grandpa fished the bay in a sailboat and made a living for his family. And my family's been here for millennia, my dad's side anyway, and it's made me connect and respect that and just appreciate it like the best thing.
Let's talk about your culture.
Let's do it. I'll try not to cry.
That's great.
I am Yupik. My Yupik name is Ernerculria, and that means, my grandma gave it to me. It was also my uncle's, who I never met. He was the oldest child. It means morning star, or ready for the day, which, as you know, this morning I definitely needed coffee, so I don't know how great of a morning person I am until I have my coffee, but very lucky to have that name. And my grandparents, my grandfather Willie Coupchiak is from Coupchiak. He was born upriver. My grandma Mary Coupchiak was born in Clark's Point and then raised in Aleknagik. And I'm just now, I keep asking all my elder aunties like stories of my grandparents. My grandma passed away when I was 16, and then my grandpa a couple years after that. I guess my grandma met my grandpa and basically was like, we're getting married, is the gist of what I got. And she was a tough woman. And he was a self-taught mechanic. But I just remember being the closest to my grandma. They'd speak Yupik to me growing up, and I'm lucky that I'm going back to school. And so I'm taking Yupik starting this fall semester. So I know it's in there, but I'm excited to actually learn it, and I still have family members that are fluent, so I'm going to be talking to them a lot. But she is a badass. She had 9 children, and I think like actually 12, just 3 didn't make it. I mean, out. And my dad was the youngest, but I guess my grandma had 2 kids and then got TB. And so they shipped her to Tacoma, somewhere totally foreign, alone. So my grandpa was left with the 2 eldest kids, and she was there for 5 years. And she had 1 lung removed. She made it, went back to Togiak, had 7 more children, and
fished.
And subsistence, cared for her family, all that. She was an amazing basket weaver. That is something I do regret not learning. But I do know there's an auntie out there that knows how, and so that's on my list to learn. But yeah, they were an incredible couple, and just provided for their family. And now that I'm older, I totally respect it.
I can see that you're very passionate about your family and your culture.
Mm-hmm.
Can I ask about the design?
Yeah, I have my markings on my face, and they represent a salmon lateral line. So basically what a salmon kind of feels and reacts, like how they react from disturbances in the water. And I got them a year ago, like June 6th.
They actually look really cool.
Yeah, I think I feel like they've always been there. And I kind of decided I had been a snow bum basically. I was fishing a lot in the summer and then living elsewhere in the winter to snowboard. So I lived in Tahoe for a bit, in Bend, Oregon, and I met my boyfriend, and I was like, I think I'm moving back to Alaska, and he was like, okay, I'll go with you. And I was like, but for me, I was like, okay, like I'm going back to Alaska. I flew up to do long lining, and then I came to do salmon. And right before I was like, I'm moving here right after the season. Like I'm moving all my stuff up, and it was kind of like a salmon coming home. Like I was like, I have all these things that I want to get involved with. Like I know what I need to go back to school to help me further my education and my business and stuff like that. So, and I want to be more closely tied to my culture and help Indigenous people in Alaska and specifically Bristol Bay.
So that's what brought you to...
Yeah, brought me to this design because there's other traditional ones as well.
I'll try to get a picture, guys, and put it up with the release of her episode. So you probably are not going to have an answer for this because you seem really, really happy with the sea. But what has the sea taken away from you?
After talking with you last night and trying to think about kind of how today was going to go.
See, now you make it sound like I prepped you for the whole
No,
episode.
you didn't prep me. You just were like, this is how it is. Listen to another one. And I was like, okay. But I don't really know what it's taken away from me.
Sounds
You're
like
saying
it's just given.
it's just given me a lot of opportunity and respect and just a way of life that I'm happy to carry on, and I hope to carry on for like my kids one day and their kids. Just preserving our culture and our way of life, and this precious resource that we have here that we can't let go away.
It's been here since
Millennia.
Since your heritage has been here.
Yes. Yeah.
So it is important to protect it.
It is super important.
Do you have anything else you'd like to share with us?
I don't know. I'm back to running my own boat this year. I was on a pretty nice boat the last 6 years, and I'm back at it. Because my boat needed a lot of work. The K-17 needed a lot of work. It was dry. It needed RSW, all that stuff. So my mom ended up building a boat, and so I was on that boat the last 6 years, and I'm back to captaining my own boat. I learned a lot from my uncle on that boat. He let me run the boat some, and I learned how he read the water, or I hope I learned how he read the water. I feel like I know what he was doing and stuff like that. So this start of this season has been a little rough with leasing a new boat, or a new boat to me. It's definitely not a new boat. Leasing a boat that's new to me and just overcoming the challenges. Seems like it's never ending. But I'm finally in the water. I have one of my crew here. Another one comes here in a couple of days, and just ready to rock. And so I feel like I haven't missed much at all. So that's kind of working in my favor. If everything else isn't, I know that's working. And now I'm just ready to fish.
Okay. Well, Morningstar, thank you for taking the time.
Quyana, I'm super thankful to be here.
Okay. And nothing else to say?
I just hope everyone has a great, safe season out there.
Okay. All right, guys. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time.
Thanks for listening to Galley Stories. We hope you like what the net brought in. Please leave us a review on iTunes. Whether you like it or not, we're not fishing for compliments. Look us up on Facebook and Twitter too, and reach out to us at galleystories@gmail.com.